The Hill is reporting on an interesting new fact here on the election. They say military troops favor Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson for president over Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, according to a new survey. Johnson garnered 38.7% of the active duty vote versus 30.9% for Trump and 14.1% for Clinton, according to the survey. So I should be clear here and note that it was not a scientific poll, but it was of 3,500 people who are in the military, and they're actually all registered to vote. I think it's over 90% of them are registered to vote. So if there's even a grain of truth in this, which I think there is, that's amazing. That's amazing. Because you have a third-party candidate who's basically getting no press coverage, or very, very little press coverage, doing better than Trump and Hillary. Now, also, we should add Jill Stein into the mix. If I'm not mistaken, in 2012, the candidates that were most favored by the military were actually Obama, or I'm sorry, it may have been 2008. It was Obama and Ron Paul. What does that tell you? That tells you that the candidate that's actually most anti-war is the one who does best among the troops. And remember, at the time, Obama's done 7 interventions, and, it turns out he's not really anti-intervention. But at the time in 2008, all of his rhetoric was, too much war, gotta get out of it, these wars were a mistake, they're making us less safe. And obviously Ron Paul is even more anti-war than President Obama. Even his rhetoric was more anti-war, kind of the classic libertarian position. Well, Gary Johnson, same thing. Gary Johnson and I have a lot of disagreements, but one of those disagreements is not war. He seems to me to be a classic libertarian in that sense, and he's like, yeah, no, these are stupid, and they're making us less safe, and they're draining our resources and all this stuff. So, I would have been interested to see what would happen if you had Jill Stein in the mix. Now, again, granted, not as many people know who Jill Stein is. But I think the more people learn about her, the more likely they are to vote for her. Because, for example, all the disaffected Bernie voters, of them, I include myself in that pack, they'll look at her and go, so we actually still have an option that kind of represents our views. Now, Jill is actually, in some respects, to the left of me. But that's okay. I've said repeatedly that I have no problem voting for somebody to the left of me in the U.S. because there's conflict built into the system, and they're not going to get everything they want anyway. So they're going to get their policies chipped away at. So some of the stuff I don't agree with would never happen. By the way, not that I think there's a genuine chance of a third-party candidate winning, but, hey, you should, at the very least, tell pollsters today if you're asked, yes, I want Jill Stein or I want Gary Johnson. Why? Because if you get them to a certain percentage, they get in the debates and they can raise all sorts of hell. And they can keep Trump and Hillary accountable and get them on the record more. And they can raise real important issues. And like I've said, if you're in a state that's solidly red or solidly blue, why the fuck wouldn't you vote for a third-party candidate and somebody who 100% represents your beliefs better? Because in those states, it's going to go one or the other anyway. No matter what you do this election cycle, there's no doubt that, whatever. For example, Oklahoma is going to go to Trump, and Hawaii is going to go to Hillary Clinton. There's no doubt about that. So if you're a voter in those states and you feel the same way about Trump and Hillary like all sane people do, yeah, Jill Stein is your candidate. If you're left, and if you're centrist / libertarian / right-leaning, Gary Johnson's the way to go. So, and I would encourage everybody, go to their websites, man. Like, people keep asking me to do a general breakdown of their policy positions. Just go to their website. I'll do stories about them when they're in the news, and we've already done a few stories about Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, and I'll continue to do them because they deserve a hell of a lot more coverage. But just go to their website. They'll tell you exactly what their policy positions are. Gary Johnson will tell you his, Jill Stein will tell you hers, and I think you'll find a lot that's agreeable, certainly more agreeable than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So this is actually a very welcome development in my mind that the troops prefer Gary Johnson. Let's try to get both Gary Johnson and Jill Stein in the debates. I think you have to be at 15% to get in the debates. By the way, a number that I think they keep rising over the years. They keep making it higher. And Gary Johnson might be at about 12% or maybe even 14% in some polls, but on average, maybe about 10%. You got to bump him up, man. Even if you're going to vote for Hillary or Trump or not vote at all, just tell pollsters and spread the word about Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. Get him up to 15%. I believe she's polling at about 5% in some polls. Got to get her up to 15%. And meanwhile, we should all start petitions and shit and say, get them into the debates. If you're one of the major networks and you're hosting a debate and you don't allow them in, that's journalistic malpractice. You're just trying to censor an option that people have. You got to let them in the debates. As much as entertaining as a Trump versus Hillary debate would be one-on-one, I mean, keep it real, it's better for the nation if we also have Gary Johnson on stage and Jill Stein on stage to actually make some decent points as opposed to those two monstrous idiots who it'll eventually become a personal snipe fest. So let's try to get them in the debates. Let's raise holy hell over it. Let's start petitions and whatnot. And just remember you have other options, and the troops certainly know that they have other options.